everyone. Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. We are talking the final book of Middlewest tonight, and I got my compatriots, Old Wolf, with me tonight. What's going on, sir?
Not much. How you doing?
I am doing pretty well. Just sipping on water tonight, but you know.
As long as you're sipping.
It's a Wednesday. And we got my man Tacoma Comics. What's going on, sir?
Hey. Not much. Just living the dream.
Living the dream, that's all you can ask sometimes. So
that's it.
All right. So yeah, we are here to talk the final 6 issues of Middlewest. I am super curious to see what you guys have to say tonight. Tony, you are the one that had read this before, so I'm going to let Tacoma go first just on general impressions of this final volume. Obviously, we'll have final thoughts at the end, but just your general impression of this volume.
So I think it fell in between Volume 1 and Volume 2 for me. I still think Volume 1 is probably my favorite. There was just the most meat there in terms of this whole world. As we talked about 2 weeks ago, Volume 2 just kind of like went by in a flash. This one certainly, I think, had much better pacing and was a real joy to read. I guess like halfway through, like you kind of knew where it was going. You saw the resolution, and it maybe took a little too long to get there, or maybe I wanted more. There was a lot of repetition. I think you might know the part I'm talking about. But overall, I enjoyed it for sure. I think it was a great ending to the series.
Okay. Olaf, what about you? What do you think of the final part of this series here?
No, I agree with Tacoma. This was better than the second the second book, I guess you can say. Second.
Yeah.
You found out a little bit more about backstories on this one. You find out, you see how he's grown, how he's working with the team of the other kids to figure out how to get out of here and that type of thing. So, I enjoyed this one. So,
okay, interesting, because I think this for me is my least favorite portion of the story. And I really think for me, and we'll get into it as we get there, is it comes down to Raider as a character.
Yep.
And I don't feel like he brings much to the story other than we spend a lot of time here on this farm, and he's, I guess, a replacement for his father in terms of just another bad adult. And we'll get into that. But for me, he just didn't. The whole stuff with him did not work for me.
Gotcha.
I felt like it would have almost been better if it had just been Grandpa. Because I feel like that's what he's substituting for. Like, he's just another version of what he's dealt with his grandfather and his father. So I don't know. That character for me, like, made this volume not work as well. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. I still enjoyed the series as a whole, but I do think it just, the height of volume 1 was never reached again for me throughout the rest of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, with that, let's dig in here a little bit and see if maybe as we discuss it, I'll change my mind a little bit or not. So we start with issue 13 here, and we see sort of the decline in these few pages to start of Abel and Dale's relationship. We see him go from being proud of him when he first gets his route, when he was still married, to Abel's mom, and then we just see this steady decline in in mom and dad's relationship, which leads to a decline in son and dad's relationship. What did you guys think of this sequence here at the beginning?
Which one?
Tony, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the father's basically blaming the son for the mother leaving.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that's why there's that decline at the beginning. They've seen, God and Abel's up there. His alarm clock goes off at 4:30. He does the job. Mother's afraid. Like he's a little too young for that. Oh, it's good. It's good. A little hard work never hurts anyone, right? And then as the parents fight, it just to the point where she leaves and he's saying the same words, but it's not the same way. And it's kind of like he's blaming the son for the mother leaving.
What about you, Tacoma? What do you think of this little bit opening sequence here?
I mean, it definitely put things kind of in order chronologically. Like he was proud of the son until the mother left, and then he took things out on the son. It occurs to me that we don't really know who was the asshole, the father or the mother, like that really was the bad person, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Right? Like
well, it's just a relationship that fell apart, I think. Yeah.
Right. And then so that just left Abel as the target of the father's ire. But yeah, I do think it's neat how they go directly from like it's, I'm proud of you, son, a little hard work never hurt anyone, you're doing a great job, to stop complaining, et cetera, but that only happened after the mother had left.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's really just kind of demonstrating how this relationship fell apart, and it was really the father allowed the fact that the marriage fell apart to make his relationship with his son fall apart. As he let it affect both things. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's kind of interesting though. It's like, is that abusive streak always going to come out eventually for somebody who is raised that way, or does it take a catalyst like the mother leaving? I mean, if the mother had stayed, was he eventually going to clash with Abel anyway? I don't know what Scotty's trying to say about like what brings that anger out. To me, it seems like it's always going to come out eventually. But here they kind of like saying there was a reason for it. You guys excuse me because I'm going to eat while we're doing this, but my wife just made me dinner and I don't have a choice about timing.
You're okay. So I think it's there, and it's obviously part of why she probably leaves. And it's just that he stops making the effort to control it, I think. Like when we get to the end and they're discussing there, it sounds to me like, he was trying his hardest not to be his father. And then when things started going bad, he stopped trying to not be that guy to a certain degree. Like he fell into the trap that was always going to be there, and he just had to find ways to like manage it. And he just stopped trying to a certain degree, I think. Olaf, do you have a thought on that?
Oh, I don't. His father, the grandfather to this father, he always put him down. So I don't. Is he really understanding what's going on with him and his wife, and putting the blame on her instead of it's a mutual blame? Because he's you treat me like an asshole. I'm a big asshole to you. Yeah, you're an asshole, and then it's like they're not happy anymore. And she goes, yeah, maybe, and so then go leave. It's like she's pushing him away. It's easy to be angry and push away.
Yeah.
And so, and then to that one guy when he comes back and she's gone. So.
Okay. Well, then we jump back to Raiders Farm and we see them. We get a demonstration quickly of how dangerous this work is as they're working with fuel, basically. How these plants work is interesting to me.
Yeah.
And basically we get I mean, Raider's basically just a stand-in for me, and like we get the sequence, and we get introduced to some of the rest of the other kids here. We get their little team leader who, what's her
Junie?
name?
Junie, Junie.
Yeah. I lost it. So anyway, we get introduced to her. We kind of see what they're doing, and how they're working the fields and that kind of stuff. And we see Abel at this stage is basically sort of just giving up, and we see Bobby trying to pull him back to himself. Is there anything in this initial sequence at the farm that you guys want to talk about? Tacoma.
Not really. I mean, I'm trying to hear your comment about the father or the Raider being the grandfather, right? And
well, what's another abusive adult?
Like, right, but I'm trying to wonder if they're trying to paint him differently as worse or as not capable of redemption the way the family is, or I'm trying to figure out the reason. Like you said, he didn't do much, he didn't add much to it for you, so I'm trying to figure out. But he kind of just he's a cardboard cutout for like a lot of taskmasters that you see in this type of thing. There's not much that distinguishes him beyond that. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure that Abel was going to be this despondent because he didn't seem, if I recall, at the end of volume 2, I mean, they got captured, right? But I didn't realize like that the fight had gone out of him, sort of thing.
Right.
I knew it was devastating not finding his mother, and finding his grandfather was not the person he thought he was going to be, but I didn't realize that like he'd become despondent the way they show him here.
Yeah, because we don't get long. Like we see the sequence when at the beginning of or at the end of the previous issue when they first get captured and Raider kills the other kid, and you see his eyes all like, but yeah, there's not really a full explanation of just how bad Abel is in that scenario. But yeah, he's definitely despondent here. But what about you, Tony? Is there anything you see in this sequence that stands out?
Well, the only thing that really stands out to me is like, yeah, the guy is really not a nice guy, but Abel just blames himself for everything, Yeah. So, and that's why it's Bobby, right? Has to kind of wake him up and tell him, you can pick if what's the line about picking family, picking?
Yeah, you can pick your family. Yes.
Right. So she's trying to pick him up, and he's way down there.
Yeah. So then we jump back to Maggie and Jed and them trying to recruit people to help them take on Raider and save these kids. And Maggie just kind of assumes everybody's going to leave her, and yet and some of them do. Not everyone's looking for a fight, but she has a ton of people that has earned, whose loyalty she's earned. So, is there anything in that stood out to me? I felt like that was sort of just a means to an end. I don't know.
Formulaic, right?
Yes.
Like they just kind of going through the motions. Again, you've seen this before. Who will stand and fight with me?
Yeah, I mean,
why should we stand and fight with you? Okay, you got through to a few of us.
Yeah. And yeah, it seemed and I think that's where this volume lost me, is it seemed like both sides of this seemed like very generic. Whereas I felt like the first 2 volumes had a feel of something new and different. Yeah. This all felt like stuff I'd read before. Until you get to the very end. Thank you, Carlito. Appreciate that. And although we do see on the last page of this issue that where we'd seen Dale turn into the Storm the last time, that he's just gone full Storm at this point.
Yeah.
Like he's just constantly, and we see the consequences of that as we go forward. But that he's completely lost it at this stage. Which jumps us to the next issue, and we kind of see the kids still working the farm, and there's an accident that's potentially gonna take out, that potentially puts Bobby in danger, puts another worker in danger, and we see Abel almost lose it, but pull himself back together and actually save pretty much everybody, because if that truck goes up, then it's, they're all probably toast at this point. What did you think about the sequence here where with Abel at the beginning of this, kind of responding in a way we hadn't seen him before? Yes, the artwork in this is fantastic, and we'll have to talk more about that before we get done. But
I mean, he just Abel's just astounded that everybody's just watching this guy get burned.
Yeah,
it's like, why is anybody? And that's what's upsetting him the most, is like that, nobody's doing anything. They're gonna just let this guy die.
Yeah.
And so, but he gets a hold of himself, gets an extinguisher, puts the guy out, saves the guy's life.
The thing to me that stands out here is that he controls his wind, right? He controls his temper. He's about to lose it, right? And whatever it was, a switch flipped, and he decided, okay, I'm going to do a different plan. I'm going to get this fire extinguisher. I'm going to tell Bobby to jump, and I'm going to do all this stuff, and we're going to save this guy, And he was very clearly about to lose at the page before, right? And so something is happened, and he's decided, hey, there's another way to do this, sort of thing.
Yeah, you see him starting to have a level of control we haven't seen from him yet before. Mm-hmm. He's starting to be able to control his emotions more than what we thought. So from there, we go basically back to the mess hall for all the kids and all the work teams, and we start getting some of the backstories on some of the other kids, including their little team leader, and how she came to be here, and how that none of these kids have had good lives necessarily, or good family home life, and that's sort of how they all ended up here, is Raiders taking advantage of that. What did you think about the backstory here of, gosh dang it, I cannot find her name anywhere where they say it.
Isn't it Julie?
Is it Julie? Or is it, I thought it was something slightly different than that, but maybe so.
It's like, I thought it was Junie.
Junie.
Maybe. I read it in the dark last night, so.
Well, I know they listed a couple different times, and I just haven't been able to find it anywhere where I'm talking about it. But anyway, they're team leader, and we get kind of her background as preacher's kid, and basically, but she wasn't the, she wasn't the kid they wanted her to be. So, What did you think about her background here?
Well, you're right. It is Junie.
Junie. That's it.
Again, formulaic to an extent. You're the preacher's daughter, but you like girls, and so daddy's not happy. Like, we've seen that story, but what I like about this is kind of 2 pages before Junie's story. The kid that Abel had beat up, I think it's the kid he had beat up. He's saying, you are breaking the chain. He's like, no, I'm not. I ran away. I'm trapped here. He's like, but you're talking about it, right? Yeah. You're recognizing that level of anger and expressing that you don't love it. And that resonates with me a lot. Because my father was very, very loud and obnoxious, very self-righteous Englishman. Bloody hell, this, that, and the other thing growing up. And 3 nights ago, when the neighbors literally across the street from us were lighting off fireworks, and fireworks are illegal in Tacoma, and my dogs, both of them pit bulls, who they are going to spend the whole night shivering and trying to like crawl under blankets and whimpering, and we have to drug them and stuff, and it just creates this whole strain. I went out and I yelled bloody murder at the neighbors. Like I shut them down from across the street with my loud voice, and like I recognized my father coming out at me. Right, I didn't stop it, but I do it less than he did. Last 2 nights, New Year's Eve was not a good example of that, but I do it way less than he did. Like being aware of it, I think that's what they're getting at here, and I like that part that resonated with me. Is like, hey, at least you're trying, at least you're talking about it, at least you're recognizing it. And to me, that was a really, really good moment.
And I think you're right, because that is maybe the big difference between Abel's efforts and Dale's efforts, which was Dale's effort was, I'm not going to acknowledge my father. I'm not going to be like him. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be thing. But like, he didn't want to but he also didn't actually really deal with what was going on with himself.
Right.
And so, yeah, you see Abel here throughout this, he's trying to deal with it.
There's a couple moments that, I think the realization keeps building on him while he's with this group. And that's kind of that's what I do like about this volume the most.
Yeah. I just feel like there's just too few of those moments. But so from there after we get all the kids' backstories here, Wolf, I don't know if I gave you a chance. Anything in there that you wanted to talk about?
No, he hit it.
Okay. So from there, Raider calls him up to the office because he's seen that, like, he almost turned into the storm. Like, he realizes what Abel is, and he tries to recruit him. Basically, it's like, hey, I'm gonna give you a promotion, place here, and Abel appears to go along with it because we've seen him kind of just like lost, but no, he's really like, no, we're gonna use this. This is our opportunity to get out of here. We're going to use my new position to try to figure out what we need to get out of here. What did you think about that sequence, Tony?
I'm looking. I'm just scanning it right now. So this guy knows what the storm is. That Abel has it.
Yeah,
but he's hinting that he could have had it.
He hints at that, which is
Then they glossed over that, right? They didn't make as big a deal of that as I thought they might.
Well, so here's what I think that is. I think that's just him manipulating him. Because he sees this kid that has this power and is trying to control it, and he hints at him like it's part of the offer. It's it's Palpatine to Anakin. It's like, oh, well, we can find this power together. Like, I did it. I could have been a storm like you, but I'm not. And you don't have to be this. Join me, help me, and we'll figure this out together. And I'll, So I think he's full of crap, honestly.
Okay.
I think he's just saying,
I didn't understand that. I
think he knows what it is, but I think he's full of crap. I think he's just using that knowledge to, hey, I'm somebody, trust in me, come work for me, kid, because, I'm going to use you, but I'm going to make you think that I can help you, that I can help you find a way to control this.
That makes sense, yeah.
What did you say, Tacoma?
I said that makes sense, yeah.
All right, so issue 15 is a whole bunch of Maggie and Jeb trying to navigate this storm that Dale has become, that's flooded basically. We're not talking almost to Noah Ark levels.
Yeah.
And it's all about them more than half the issue is them trying to get across the river. And I don't know what purpose it served.
Come on, they made their cars and trucks into boats.
They made their vehicles into boats, and then
you were able to put them back together on the other side of the river. That's awesome.
And then the guy she uses magic, and a guy who was like the river master to help them navigate across, and then there's this weird scene with the fish out of the water, and it doesn't really have a follow-up. They're just across the river.
Well,
I guess they're using the fish, I guess, to like transport the
pull
boats.
to pull the
boats. I don't know, the whole thing. I don't know. Am I missing something? What am I missing here, Tony? What am I missing? Why is this important to the story?
One, it shows how bad the storm or this father is making everything.
Yeah.
And I think the part with I don't know, it just gives another reason for Maggie to use her powers, I guess, because this guy's like catatonic, I guess.
Yeah.
This
shows that she has these mental abilities that she
right. So she just crawls in his head and has a conversation, and I guess he's able to. I don't know. Does he show how to get out there? Is he the one that contacts the fish?
I guess
he's like Aquaman. I mean, it's all a little strange. Like I don't know. It's, at points, this book seems to be caught between telling the story of Abel and generational grief and trauma and abusive parenting and found family. And at times it seems to be telling this fantastical story of this wonderful magic land that if it existed as a backdrop, it would be great. But sometimes it gets so deep into the lore of it that it takes away from the other story without really seeming to have a point.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's what I think is going on here. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
River Master is catatonic, and then she uses her magic and talks to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I really didn't like that guy, but what am I gonna do? You know?" So I just retreated into myself because I couldn't do anything, and now that you're here, I guess I'll wake up and help you out crossing that river with the magical fish, which is all very cool, and it's fantastical, and it's magical, and the artwork's great, and it's just like another aspect of Scotty Young and Jorge Corona's minds going like crazy, but to what extent? To what purpose?
And that's honestly, I feel like that's what a lot of this volume is. Just, I mean, it's kind of like the squirrels. It's kind of like that whole sequence with of them going to the native tribe and stuff, and it's just like, okay, that at least kind of moved the story. This doesn't even feel like it moves the story. We don't need to see this part of their journey, I guess. But, I mean, it's cool, but it just doesn't. It's part of why this volume just doesn't seem to work for me as well.
But they couldn't. I mean, I really don't think they could have just stayed on done all this about on the farm, and all of a sudden Maggie and the truck show up. There had to be something to show.
I guess, but I don't understand why it's this. Like, it's just weird. I don't know.
Like if they had been traveling in the trucks, and Maggie and Jed were even exposition, I think, about like their background and the original deal she made with Raider, so that he would leave her alone, but he would do his thing, and she wouldn't bother him, and she would get the carnival. Like if they had just told that story while they were traveling in the trucks across a bumpy road through a crazy storm, but to go to the extent where they get to this town, the bridge is out, they find the sheriff finds the river master's catatonic, the magician lady talks to the catatonic river master. He decides he wants to help them, so he somehow summons the fish to help them get across the river. It's fantastical, and there's something to be said about that. But without a story, like, yes, they've had to do something, but I think they could have done something that would have, more clearly explained some of Jed and Maggie's motivation, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. So from there, we do get a little bit back at the farm, and we see the kids starting to put their plan together, stealing pass cards and stealing suits and getting the equipment and everything they need so that they can try to make their escape. Anything in here that is their planning effort that stands out in any way other than he's kind of become the leader?
Right.
Well, he has purpose, and
Yeah.
that's when, and he's happy. And when he had his paper out, he was happy, right?
Yes, kind of like when he was at the carnival. He had people, he had a purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do like that, like, it was some of Fox's skills teaching him how to pickpocket and stuff that he used. That was nice. I actually miss Fox.
I think the volume, that for me, maybe it's why the volume suffers, is because
I think the Fox would have been better if he was like sneaking around the farm and like, chatting with, even if Abel was still mad at him and they were, fighting, just like having Fox there, I think giving the counterpoint would have punched this up a bit.
Yeah.
He took a back seat now, whereas he was kind of at the forefront during the first two volumes.
So we jump from there into issue 16, and before they can make their escape, Abel has another dream about his dad, where he starts to turn into the storm, kind of like he did with Maggie. And Bobby's able to pull him back. And we see that, he's got somebody that's like his friends are able to like reach him, and he brings it back under the control. And they put their little plan into motion on, of course, a rainy day because the storm has now reached them as well.
Right.
What did we think of this escape plan? Tacoma, what did you think of their little plan to get out of here?
It's an escape from Alcatraz. I mean, it seemed like they gathered a lot of intel very quickly on the farm and the irrigation and where the water tunnels would leave. It was one of those plans where it hinged on everything going right for a long series of circumstances.
Yeah.
But before that, again, I just want to point out, like, Bobby calms him down, like you said. And I think that's now our second instance of him being pulled back, whereas before we thought it was only through Maggie's magic that he could be calmed down.
Right.
But it seems like there's more that can calm him down. And so this introspection, this control is building more and more, which I find really
people are able to reach him at this
point.
Well, Bobby just said that she chose him as family. And it's a positive family. It's not a negative family that he's had in the past. So, and he is getting more mature than what he was when he left, right? So he's becoming mature. He's getting a more sense of self. He's not putting himself down like he was before. So I think that's all helping him control this. He's controlling it. It's not controlling him.
Yeah. So, of course, like any of these escape plan type things we ever get, it all goes to crap. And we see Raider do what they were doing, and basically we get a confrontation between them and Raider, and just as he's about to put the beat down on Abel here, Maggie and the reinforcements arrive. Is there anything in this sequence that was worth discussing any deeper here, Tony?
One thing I noticed, they're drawing him different here than they did before. If you look at here, you know what I'm saying? They're drawing him way different now.
They're drawing him older to a certain extent.
Yeah.
A little more serious for sure.
Right.
A little bit more angular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before it was like, it's like not chubby, but a little meatier face, squared, kind of like a square rounded jaw. But here it's more he's getting older. He's he's standing up to the guy, you know. And
even like if you look at him earlier in the issue, after he wakes up, like you see his face. Oh, I just left Tony up there. Sorry, Tony. Like you see his face here.
It's rounder.
Yeah. And then you see his face at the end of the issue. Yeah, there's definitely an art style change, even from when they're in the when they're in the tunnel there, to them coming out in the rain.
Right.
This sequence here. But we also get this whole thing is kind of a mirror of the last scene with Dad when he ran away. Like,
right.
Yeah. And I think
big man and their little confrontation. It's a mirror here of what happened, and instead of turning into a storm, Raider just is going to punch him. But
Raider's hat falls off, and he's got the long hair and the beard, and very much stand-in for grandfather and father. And even at some point earlier, Abel almost called him my pa, and then he said Raider.
Right.
So yeah, it's just his true stripes are showing now.
Yeah. So we get the big battle here in the next issue of basically the fields are burning and everybody's gonna get burned up, and their Raiders guards are taking out the people that have come, and there's it's just a big fight. Anything in here before we get to in the initial stages of this, before we basically get to Raider, Abel, and Maggie that you guys want to discuss? Tacoma, is there anything in here at the initial parts of this fight other than the art? You get some.
I like that Bobby is reunited with Wrench.
Yes, that is good.
He's kind of a cool little thing, and I love the color change and the pinks and reds throughout this whole sequence. But it's not much going on. It's just a battle, and everything's burning. And Abel doesn't like being called boy.
Yeah.
There was extinguishers that are pretty cool. And there's a lot of them too. Well,
except for the fact that I feel like instead of extinguishing everything, they're the ones that are spreading the fire. It's like wait, aren't they supposed to be putting it out? So we get to the end of this, and of course it's Maggie, Raider, and Abel, and she tries to use her mind abilities on him, and it works for a moment, but he's able to strong-willed enough, doesn't care enough when she tries to use all the spirits of the dead children on him, and basically he's going to take her out.
Right.
And
I mean, he was giving Abel a pretty good beatdown before that.
Yes, for sure.
So here's what I guess I think bothered me here, right? I don't really get satisfactory answers to the backstory here. Why did she make the deal with him in the first place?
We don't know.
What did she get? Because she's like, I can't believe this is what happened. Now you're in my head. I've carried around these spirits of the dead children. Now you've got to deal with them too. Well, clearly that's not going to bother him.
Right.
As a ploy, maybe if he sees the spirits of the dead children, that will upset him more. That didn't work. So now we know that she's been carrying around this heavy weight, this guilt over the deal that she made. We still don't really know why she and Jed let Raider come to power and rule everything, and everybody turned a blind eye.
I mean,
Especially when they have power, magical powers, and he doesn't.
yeah. All we ever got from it was the little discussion they had previously, which was basically that he left her traveling carnival alone.
Right.
But, like, that wasn't much of a win.
Because it seems like she's has power to stop him. Before he built this whole thing with the Ethel and all his minions, all he had was big muscles, but she's got the magic, and so does Jed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It left a lot out that wasn't quite answered.
And I think that's part of why their whole sequence, like you said earlier, like if we'd gotten that instead of the thing with the fish at the river, like
yeah,
that would have been it would have worked better. Well, of course, Raider's gonna kill Maggie, and that causes Abel to go full on Storm Boy. And yeah, we see him defeat and apparently kill Raider, which is not what I initially thought, but like I just assumed he'd gotten beat up, but they say he killed him. I will say the art on this splash page.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, is
I mean, the artwork in most of the last half of this issue is like that, and it's just great. Yeah, I mean, look at Raider's like faded out face on that page you just showed. Yeah, that's crazy cool.
And so we see Abel start to like Fox and Maggie try to reach out to him, pull him back. Now that he's gone full storm, and he can't quite do it. And when the extinguishers start trying to deal with it, attack him, he really can't do it.
So are they shooting pulses of air?
I don't know what they're doing exactly. Like, they don't make any sense. They're supposed to be extinguishers to put out the fire, and yet they seem to be blasting everything and spreading the fire, and it doesn't, like...
They're cutting holes in, like, Abel's wind.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means they should be, like, shooting air, which you wouldn't want to do on a fire. Like,
give it more oxygen. That will...
Yeah. No.
Oh, what could have been some kind of, like, vacuum or something? They shooting...
I guess there's just no explanation here. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And this, again, just comes back to, it's another thing in this volume that just doesn't quite work for me. I feel like, this whole volume was set up for him to find family again, find like people that cared about him, step up and become, a leader, become important, understand the important things before his obvious reuniting with Dad. But like some of this stuff just doesn't quite work for me. Like that's why I was like said at the beginning, like the Raider stuff just, I don't know. I felt like there could have been better ways to get here where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like the extinguishers are going to basically put him out, destroy him, when suddenly they're destroyed and we see Little Storm and Big Storm reunited here.
It feels so good. Yeah.
Which is just another, like, the Jorge Corona's storms and wind and clouds and stuff are just freaking phenomenal. And whoever the colorist is, Jean-Francois Bellelou. Yeah. Just the two of them together, just make these pages amazing. So we get the final confrontation between. I mean, there's some other stuff here with Maggie and the people and the remaining people that worked on the farm for Raider and stuff, but mostly this is about we finally get Abel and his dad. And he keeps like calling to him at the beginning of this before, and Abel, like we see, goes from dad being the big storm to Abel being the big storm when he realizes who it is and what's going on. And we get the, Abel starts to tell him off. What did you guys think about this whole sequence that builds up to where this is going here before we get to where it's actually going? Olaf.
Well, father got there in the nick of time. Everything was going downhill for them, especially because the main character Abel was getting his butt kicked.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, so the father came in the nick of time. He's been looking for his son. He found the son. And then as you read on, I mean, right now it's just them fighting together.
Yeah.
And Abel being like, bang, he's saying Abel, and the father says bang off. Well, Abel says F you. So
yeah.
It seemed like he had to get that last F you out. Like that was like that was the culmination before like the I'm done fighting sort of like thing. Which is kind of nice, and just the artwork through all that is phenomenal. Watching them go back and forth, it's surreal. It really is. But that was Abel's last gasp, so to speak.
Well, I mean, Abel, after he does that, he attacks it. Like he attacks the other storm, and we see Dale. As a result. I think mainly just because he's finally reunited with the son, and he's just like not really interested in resisting anymore. Finally revert back to his human form over several pages here.
Yeah,
I think it goes from Abel first attacking him to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7 pages before we get the Abel storm versus dad is just a guy again. The art of which is all fantastic, but it seems a little drawn out to me. But
well, I mean, Abel has to get his licks in.
Yeah,
I mean, for all those years, he's going to get his licks in, and the father's
not getting his licks in for sure.
And the father doesn't want to fight him. He's been worried about him. Way worried about it, to the point where if he thinks someone's not helping him, he loses it. So this kind of so yeah, he's getting Abel's getting his licks in, but his father's not going to hurt him. He doesn't want to hurt him. He found his son. That's what he wanted to do.
So we see Tacoma. What about you? Anything in that whole sequence there? Is there kind of battling?
Yeah, it's hard to tell if there's like a point at which the father gives up fighting, like, or why, because all he was trying to do is find his son.
Yeah.
So he found his son, but he was fighting him for a while as the father just protecting himself.
I don't know that he ever really fights him. Like he was fighting the machines,
right?
And then when Abel realizes it's him and he yells at him, and then it's just pretty much Abel going after him, and he's not really putting up much of a fight. It just takes him a long time to turn back into a person. So I don't feel like it's really a fight, because I mean, what he's trying to get out is the "I'm sorry."
Right.
And when he finally says it, it almost makes you see Abel pause for a second, and then almost get angrier. Right.
You're not going to get forgiven just because you apologize.
Yeah.
But again, the dad had this realization, but at what point? He was still pissed off the last time we saw him, like when he couldn't find his son, right? Like he
Well,
went.
what we saw though, the very last panel of him before he turned into the giant storm, is he breaks down in the street and he says he's out there, he's all alone, and it's all because of me. He's scared of me.
Okay.
What caused him to turn into the storm?
All right. Yeah, I'd forgotten that part. That makes more sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get the page of him just on the ground, just basically begging for forgiveness. And you see the storm starting to dissipate around him as Abel also starts to revert. And we see Abel letting him have it and him just taking it. Before Abel finally calms down here, and we get this conversation, and Dan almost wants him to just kill him.
Yeah.
Because he even asked him to finish this, and he's like, "I am," and he's like, "No, not like this. We both know what I deserve." And the thing is. And he was like, "You don't. No one does. You broke me, but you're broken too. I know that now. I saw him again, your dad, and he's upset."
Well, yeah. I mean, this is like the meat of the whole volume here.
Yeah,
right?
This is the meat of the whole story. Are these changes?
That's
this
what's trying to the whole
conversation?
story. But he goes, "That's no excuse for how he treated you. No, it's not. But it's a reason. It doesn't make it right, but I can understand it a little bit better." And so, this growth in Abel, this part at least, I think, seems natural. I feel this more than I felt a lot of this volume. It seems like it makes sense that Abel's reached this point, and he's breaking that chain, so to speak. And so, yeah, I kind of really like that.
Well, I do think it's for everything that happens in this whole book. I mean, it all comes down to this conversation between a father and a son, and a son who's seen enough of the world at this point and seen enough to understand that, that now that his father is willing to acknowledge what he's done, he basically says, what is it? I forgive you, but I don't but I can't forget.
But what I think more than that is what's after that, where he like I said, Abel thought, it was my fault. And the father saying it was never your fault. It was me.
Right.
It was always me.
Yeah.
I mean, Abel all this time was blaming himself. The father kept saying to him, I think at the beginning about the mother leaving was his fault. And he's surprised that Abel thinks it was his fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even the father doesn't know why he's such a prick.
Well, he does, but he doesn't. He understands. At this point, I think he understands how he went wrong. He doesn't know how to fix it or how to maybe even prevent it from happening again. He's trying, but he at least in this moment acknowledges, and that's what Abel basically is saying. Hey, and that goes back to the conversation you talked about earlier that that Abel has with the other kid is, you're talking about it now. You're acknowledging that it's
right.
That's your first step to potentially redeeming yourself. he says, and I'm not going to go back with you, but it doesn't mean that we can't potentially have a relationship somewhere down the road. And that's what Dale basically says also is, I got to figure myself, I got to be better. And hopefully I have a lot of work to do, but hopefully we'll come back together someday that I can, we can have a relationship that's strong and maybe healthy. And that's kind of where we end here. We get a quick moment of Maggie talking about, who's going to be that, when he asked her to take care of his son, and she's like, well, he'll be taking care of us. But any additional thoughts on that conversation? The end here, Tacoma.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice because you can use the metaphor breaking the chain, but Abel really does that. Like the dad seems like he's like, let's go home and start over, and he's like, no, you don't understand. Like that's going to just lead back into repeat of the behavior. I don't have to kill you, right? And I don't have to and I don't have to forget this. I can forgive you, but it doesn't mean that we're just going to go back and start over, and hopefully the next time I wake up late for my paper route, you won't yell at me. Like there's still a lot of healing that's got to go on, and maybe somewhere in the future, but it's not going to happen right now. And so I kind of really like that part. It's like that full clean break. It's not like, oh, let's hug and go back home together. It's like, no, right? Let's hug and leave each other and figure this out. Maybe I'll see you in a couple of years and we can take it from there. And so I thought that was nicely done.
Yes.
Well, what I like about it is when he thought Abel was by himself and in danger, that's when he took off. And every time he went to a town, he was always the storm. He was always angry. He was always afraid. At here, when the father says we can go back, and Abel says no, is because he's not alone. He has a family. The father says, "But I'm your family." Or basically, he says, "No, I'm not alone. I have a family. I'm okay." And the father realizes that he's going to be fine. He's going to be safe, and that's when he's able to let go of Abel, and they can separate.
No, you're absolutely right. So, before I say final thoughts, but does Scotty stick the landing with this? What do you think about how this ends, Tony?
I think the father and the son, for the most part, find where they're supposed to be. Both have anger, both have fear, self-doubt, blame themselves for everything, and they let it go at the end because the father is willing to let him go and walk away and learn how to fix himself. And Abel was able to, he was on he went on an adventure by himself with the fox. He had his ups and downs. He when he was on the farm, he became older, more mature, able to control his anger. Didn't blame himself for everything. When he fought with was it Ranger? What the hell his name is? He's like, I'm not a boy. Don't call me boy. I'm not a boy. I'm
not anymore.
Not anymore. So I think they found themselves. They were able to let go of that anger that they had, of that doubt that they had. So the father goes off on his own to find his way, and Abel found his way. He found a new family, and that's how it's. Before they were small people with a lot of doubt. They end up being bigger people at the end, more happy.
Okay. What about you, Tacoma? Did he stick the landing on this ending?
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. Like, it's funny. He told the story of Abel and Dale really well, but he added so much else in along the way that he didn't really tell the story of. It was just an interesting process of weaving your way through stuff that I sort of wanted to know more about, right? While eventually getting back to what we really were supposed to care about. There's so much else going on. So I think he stuck the landing. It was a very circuitous route to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm 100% where you're at on this. Is that like the most important thing, the relationship between Abel and Dale, he handles really well, and he absolutely sticks that landing in terms of where they're at the end of the story and their relationship. How he gets there, the balance he tries to bring between this father and son story and this fantastical world we're being introduced, he doesn't achieve. In my mind, he doesn't achieve a strong balance there between giving us this cool world, but actually giving us enough about it that we understand what's going on, completely, and making it all fit with the story that he's ultimately telling. I think the landing is stuck, but it doesn't mean that we don't get off the path several times.
Oh, yeah.
During, which I guess is okay. It's just, it makes, overall, it keeps this book from being great. It just makes it good. Is where it kind of brings for me in terms of Tony. Final thoughts. How does it fit? How does it stand for you?
I mean, I enjoyed it the first time when I had the individual issues, and reading it together like this made it flow a little better than waiting for the book every month.
Right.
I still enjoy it. I think it was an adventure that went in and out that path, off the path, back on the path, like you guys said. But I still enjoyed it. I think it's a good read.
What about you?
So good read. Glad I'm read it. Interested to see what else these two do. It hasn't risen to any of my top lists. I'm not going to read it again. Right. I reread Lock and Key often. I reread parts of Saga. I reread old X-Men. So it's not at that level. It's definitely more good than bad. But I think you summed it up pretty nicely with you stuck the landing, but just took a while to get there. And maybe, it's interesting. Did he throw stuff we didn't need in? Because otherwise it would have been 5 issues and the impact wouldn't have been as good.
Right.
But they've thrown something different in that would have worked better, I guess, is the question we'll be wanting.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I do feel like some of this feels like filler, not necessarily filler, but just a way to space out their before they come together, in terms of making sure it's long enough that it actually feels like Abel could have changed enough to have the ending make sense, or gone through enough to have the ending make sense. Would I be interested in revisiting Middlewest, the world? Yes. He lays enough groundwork that it's this cool world. He just doesn't give you everything you need to make it, again, to make this great, as opposed to just a really solid read and enjoyable. But yeah, I'm definitely glad I read it. I don't know that it won't be at the top of my stack to reread. That's for sure. But that doesn't mean that but it's a really solid story. If somebody asked me, would I recommend it? Yes. All right. Anything else to add before we call this a night? We're just over an hour here. So you guys good?
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Very good.
Right, well, so the couple people that are still hanging out, I don't know if that's John and Bob's your uncle or who else in here, but next week I'll be talking Black Hammer with this guy and No Good Comics and Read Your Comics, and we're back for more Black Hammer after quite the hiatus. We haven't had a Black Hammer for a while, so looking forward to digging back into some Black Hammer. With that, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks, everybody. Later.
Thank you.